Okay.
All right. Well, aloha, everybody. Thank you for sharing this time on a Thursday. Those of you in Hawaii and those of you elsewhere, really appreciate it. So we're going to do what's called a grant management and club qualification training. I'm Dave Hamill with the Rotary Club of Waikiki, and I am the district grants chair. So that's the chair of all the district grants here in the state of Hawaii. And I know probably many of you are familiar with the grants, but for those who are not, this is a great training for you. Ready to go to the next slide. So briefly, the agenda today, we're going to talk a little bit about what the difference between a district grant and a global grant is, the application process and timeline, what each club has to do to become qualified to apply for a district grant, and what those requirements are. A little bit about stewardship and record keeping, because that is important. And then how to report on your grant and what would happen should you be audited on the grant. So that's the agenda today. Next slide. So what is a Rotary grant? Well, there are two main types of grants that the district actually can be involved in. And the first one is a global grant. So these are generally large international projects, and specifically in the key focus areas of Rotary International. A host club in a foreign country is where the project is done. And generally there are going to be several partner clubs that contribute money, your portion, your allocated share of global grant money. The final outcome needs to be sustainable and it needs to be measurable. That's not actually what we're talking about today. We're talking about the district grants. So these are the grants that support local projects right here in the state of Hawaii. And they also can be used for smaller scale international projects. You can partnership with other clubs. I know that this past Rotary year, lots of clubs got involved in tree planting together. And so that's a wonderful project where lots of clubs pitched in. But each club actually applies for the funds and participates individually. So in other words, even if it's a partnership type of project, each club still needs to write their own grant and have some level of participation. Within the district grant, there's two types of funds, and there's matching funds and there's no match funds. We're going to get into that a little bit more in just a bit. Next slide. Okay, so again, used on a variety of community and district projects, or possibly a scaled international project. The district grant project should have hands-on activity by club members at some level. It's been very challenging during the COVID time to actually do, roll up your sleeves and get out there and clean up or distribute things. I think we backed up one slide, Naomi. If you could go back forward. Oh, no, you're backing up the other way. There we go. One more. Okay, thanks. Oh, too far. Okay, there we go. Sorry, folks. So again, clubs are allocated both match and no match amounts. How the district comes up with those dollar amounts, it's based on a prior year average, 3 years, that your club member makes gifts to the Rotary Foundation, and also, very important, designates it as share funds. Now, matched funds, they do need to be matched by club funds. So say your club has, $1,000 available to it in matched district funds. Your club needs to come up with the other $1,000 for a $2,000 project. individuals, businesses, and outside groups potentially can participate. Those monies do have to go into your club coffers and then be used on the grant. A no match district grant means that your club does not have to come up with any matching funds. It's pure money that is not given to you because it's your money, but you are able to use it for a district grant of your choice without having to match funds. All clear on that? Next slide, please. And we are going to go through these pretty quickly. For those that have time at the end and want to ask me questions, why don't we reserve that until the very end. This is a really hard slide to see. Sorry, it's kind of reduced in size and it's only a portion of all the clubs in the district. But this is what the district allocation looks like when it's done. So you see on the left-hand side, the club, the average is about 4 columns in over the 3 years prior, the percentage of the total. So then you start getting into what can be a little blurry numbers, but the total DDF, the no match DDF meaning district designated funds, the matched portion, and then the global grant on the very far right-hand side. So those are, that is distributed each year to your president-elect, and it is also available on the district website for anybody to take a look at anytime they want, if you're not sure how much you have available for your club. Actually, we do already have the allocation for the upcoming year on the website. So take a look at that at any time you want. Next slide, please. Okay, so what is the process? How do clubs get their hands on these funds? Well, the first thing is to attend a grant management training, 2 members from each club. So you right now are doing that. There are various trainings throughout the year. There's one in the fall, there's one in the spring. This, I believe, is considered the makeup session. So thank you all for being here today. Then you have to complete and submit qualification forms. These forms are also available on the District 5000 website. They are due by May 31st. They're pretty simple forms to fill out. They just really need to be signed by your president-elect and 1 other club member. Other than that, there's not too much to them. This is a key though, which is getting your grant report in for this current Rotary year also by May 31st. So right now it's May 27th, and I probably have seen less than half of the clubs already submit their district grants. So it's a little bit of a scramble. As we look at the calendar going forward, on July 1st, of course, your new club administration, your president, and the officers and board of directors will be starting. And at that point is when you can actually start applying for your upcoming year, the district grant for your upcoming year. They are due by August 1st. The grant application forms are also on the website. Hopefully very easy to use. It's in Excel format. And if you have any issues with it, of course, let me know. I'm happy to help. The district grants then come into the district grant committee, are reviewed. We actually have to compile everything and forward it to Rotary International, where it's reviewed by them. And invariably they come back and go, well, this needs to be tweaked, or can you expand upon this? So it's not really cut and dry. There is some back and forth with it. In the fall, sometime, the funds are actually released to the district, and then they are released to the clubs. And then next year, 22 would be the final grant report for this upcoming year's grants. Okay, next slide.
This is Josie. I just joined.
Hi, Josie. Thanks for joining.
Hi. Yes.
We're already a little bit into it, but feel free to ask questions at the end of the seminar if you find you're missing something. Okay, next
I will.
slide.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josie. Okay, club qualifications, a very important aspect. So again, attending the grant management seminar, which you're doing tonight. Complete the grant qualification documents. There's a club financial management plan. It's not complicated at all. There's a memorandum of understanding, also very simple to fill out. And then there's an addendum to the memorandum of understanding. And each of those forms need to be signed by your president in next year. So your president-elect right now. And if you can, your president for 2022, 23, or anyone else in the club that's designated to do so, to sign those documents. Next slide. Okay, again, I'm going to be a little redundant here on certain slides, but it's important, very important, to submit final reports. And so let me just emphasize that next year, when you submit your grant application, if you don't have your grant reports in and approved for this year, then you're going to be denied the new grant. You have to have your grant report in. Ideally, again, by May 31st, which is Monday. So please follow up with those folks in the club, your current club president, if you have a grant chair, to try to get those wrapped up and to me. And again, the signatures by the president and one other club member, the attendance of this grant training, those things all qualify you for next year. And then be ready, get some ideas together and get ready to do a grant application on July 1st up to August 1st. Okay, next slide, please. Rick, whatever you are opening, I hope it's delicious, because we can hear you. Thanks for muting. You know, along those lines, Naomi, could you go back? Sorry. I would suggest talking to your incoming board about possible projects, especially now that COVID seems to be lifting and the restrictions lifting. Hopefully we'll have hands-on projects this year. What are the club funding requirements for that match portion? You should have that budgeted in your upcoming year's budget. We also need your most recent tax returns, which is typically the simple form that everybody sends in each year. And another key, which I don't think there's any issues at this point, but a dedicated district grant account. So when the funds are actually turned over to the club, it gets deposited into a district grant account. And then all of the grant activity is done through that one account, not your regular checking account. Super important that we don't commingle funds. Next slide, please. So what is that district grant bank account? What are the financial requirements? And again, it's a dedicated bank account. It can be at the same bank that you use for your regular club funds, but it is a specific separate account. And ideally, it's called the district grants account. Some clubs have other names for it, but it does need to be used specifically only for the grants. Once the funds are received by the district, it will be deposited either right into your grant account, which I'm happy to do, or we can mail you the check to your club address. Now, here's a key caveat, and that when your club is participating with a matching portion, we would like to see those funds deposited into that district grant account, hopefully prior to us releasing the DDF funds to you. And the reason for that is I've seen clubs that come up with kind of grandiose projects saying they're going to do a $10,000 project, but they got $50 in the bank. And so it just doesn't make financial sense. You know, maybe it's possible, but we would like to see the funds already deposited into your district grant account. Next slide, please. Okay, so another key factor is do not disperse the funds until you actually receive your allocated grant money. We don't want to see checks cut out of that, because what happens if the funds are delayed and you're spending money with money that you don't already have. So please try not to spend any money. Now, I have seen, and I think this is acceptable, that reimbursements are done. But again, you really should be waiting until the monies are in your checking account, your district grant checking account. Certainly don't start doing any activity on the account, don't do any activity with the account until the allocated funds are deposited.
Yeah, reimbursements might be allowed, but only after the funds have been received into.
Correct. That is correct. Thank you, Laura, for clarifying that. Now, 2 signatures are required for the disbursements, and that can either be two signatures on the check, or if there's a form or a requisition form, 2 people sign that, and then of course 1 person sign the check. All of those documents, though, should be kept in case you're audited. And then also, of course, save the invoices or receipts. Don't, just because you've cut the check and paid for the item, it is a possibility that the grant will be audited. And so we want to see all of those invoices and receipts. Our suggestion is to give all those, to give all those receipts to the club treasurer, or if you've got a grant chair, that's fine too. If there's any difference between the receipt and invoice amount, what is the reason for that? And grants and all these documents are supposed to be kept for 5 years, both in physical form and electronic forms. Next slide, please, Naomi. Okay, this is kind of hard to read also, but again, this is available on the website. And so this is the financial plan, and it's a very, very simple thing. You just put in your club name, second page, next slide, please. And this is where the president and president-elect for this year, for next year rather, and the president-elect nominee for the following year would sign, or a designate of the club. That's it for that form. Next slide, please. This is the memorandum of understanding. I'd suggest reading it, but it's pretty basic stuff. Next slide. Next slide, please. And then again, put your club name, and the same 2 people would sign this form. Next slide, please. This is the addendum, just a little more detail that the district has opted to include. And so this form is also required. And again, same 2 people sign at the bottom. Oh, and up at the top, if you could please write in your club name. Next slide, please. Okay, this is a checklist. Does not necessarily need to be included with the documents, but a little help to keep you folks organized. So, small typo down at the bottom there. We'll get that corrected. It's grants@rotaryd5000.org, like it is up top. But if you can include that, that's great. We'll just cross-check it. Next slide, please. Okay, just briefly a little bit about stewardship. I'm sure we all know what that means, but it's managing these funds responsibly. Rotary International expects us to manage these funds responsibly and report back on them on a timely basis. So we're asking the same from each club. Just make sure that the funds are being used for what it was intended to serve. Next slide. So the foundation does track this stuff. They track everything, all the reports that are coming back in. They will monitor them occasionally. There possibly would do an investigation if there's any allegations of wrongdoing. There are stewardship seminars that are taking place, qualification, of course, we just discussed. And I believe, Laura, you are are you the stewardship chair for this upcoming year? Yes, so Laura Steelquist, past district governor and just recent past foundation chair for the district, is going to be handling the stewardship. So feel free to jump in if I miss anything. Next slide, please. These are some good stewardship practices. The main thing would be to keep hold of the documents and try to keep them in a safe and secure location. And if there's any issues, to please report those. Some clubs have a stewardship chair. Ideally, that would not be the same person as the treasurer or club officer. So it's always good to have two different people looking at things. Next slide, please. Okay, audit. What is the potential that audit? Well, between 10 and 15% of clubs will be selected randomly each year for an audit. Now, the audit is done by a local committee. Ron Young, who is a retired CPA and is the guru of audits, is, I believe, if I'm correct, still doing the audit committee this upcoming year. Okay, thank you, Naomi. And, my club was audited once, and it was a relatively simple process, but, I stressed a little bit about it because you got to show them everything. You got to show them your bank records and all the receipts and everything that happened on the grant. If you're great at keeping that stuff organized, it's very simple. If you're not, well, then, it might take a little pulling together. These are the things that they will look at. Just making sure that the right person is on the bank account and they're the person signing the checks, and that you have the bank statements and so on. Again, it's simple stuff, but got to keep it organized. Next slide, please. This is kind of redundant also, but I would say the main thing is if there's any misuse, if you notice any misuse, like something is being paid for that is not supposed to be, then that needs to be reported. And I guess it goes to Laura. Next slide, please. This is the actual district grant application, and it is the exact same form that you would use for your final report. So all you do when you do the final report is check a couple of boxes and sign at the bottom, and it's good to go. It's on the website. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It's really simple. You basically just type in the project name and the various information, who's doing the project at your club, and a little bit about the proposed project. That is the information that Rotary International wants to see the most. They want detail on what the actual projects, every one of the projects that we do, they want to see that detail. So that's important stuff. And then down at the bottom, there's a project budget. And so there, you can't see it on the slide, but there's a total there. Then on the next slide, Naomi, is the how the financing gets done. And so you can see the highlighted section on that first cash one row down at the bottom. Well, it's not highlighted, it's outlined in bold. Yeah, the total project budget, that needs to match what was on the front of the page. And then you see cash, no match, matched, and total. And so cash means that's club cash that you're depositing into your district grant account. The no match, that's the amount of funds that are going to be allocated to you that you do not have to match. The matched portion, which is DDF funds that is allocated to you, but you do have to match, and then the total. And so all those cells are formulas and they add up properly. There should really be no major problems with it, but if you have questions, of course, contact us. We're happy to help. The first section is the not the first section, third section down is authorization. So that's generally should be signed by your club president. And then the final report section at the bottom is, again, like I said, that is also signed by the president. And then on the front page, you just click that it's final report. So same form used for both the application and the final report. Should have had a glass of water. I'm talking too much. Next slide, please, Naomi. Okay, so if you have questions, there's a lot of resources on the district website. Just go to rotaryd5000.org, go to the drop-down menu, select foundations and grants, select district grants, and all the forms are right there. All the forms that we just went over, all the qualification documents and the application form. Next slide, please. We're going to get to questions in just a second. This is the District 5000 Foundation team, headed up by past District Governor Del Green. And I'm the guy in red. I handle the district grants. And feel free to contact anybody on this list. We'd be happy to help. Next slide. Leave us. Oh, and don't forget, Sadie Matsui, our district governor for next year. And plan on attending the conference next year too, if you can. And final slide. Oh, I guess not final slide. Recap. A recap of what we just went over. So please get your qualification documents in to the grants@rotaryd5000.org email by May 31st. The final grant reports also by May 31st. You have just now attended the district grant training. Go out, find some great projects to work on, and have a great Rotary year. Okay, I know somebody had to leave at 5:30, so I did an abbreviated one, but you are free to go, Janice.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
That was very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you or anyone have any questions? Feel free to unmute and shoot any questions that you may have.
Dave, I have a couple. This is Kirk from Pahoa. Who does the final report? Is that the incoming president or the president from last year?
Great question,
The
Kirk.
current, yes.
The final report for this current Rotary year should be completed and signed by your current president.
Okay, good.
If you don't have a current president or he's not available, we would accept a signature from either the grants chair or your president-elect. Is that correct,
Good.
Laura? Am I correct that we
You're
would accept?
correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Got a
And
second
y'all-
question?
Go ahead. I was just going to add to that we had a conversation in the last couple of days that because right now it is extremely difficult for people to get signatures sometimes, and people don't have access to scanning to send those back, that we would accept a typed signature as well at the moment.
Oh, great.
That's right. That field can be typed in. So we are fine with accepting a typed in signature if you can't get a scan.
But just make sure if you type in somebody else's name that they know you're doing it, because we're going to ask.
Okay. And this is Kirk again. I have one more question. You have both match and no match funds. Can they both be provided on the same district project?
Absolutely. Yes, for sure. Just like that last example, they used both match and no match funds on one grant application, one project. So that is perfectly acceptable. How your club wants to divvy your match and no match is not an issue for any of us. We don't care. I mean, we care, of course, but we don't, we're not going to ask you to change that. The only thing we are making sure that you're doing is that your funds that are matched are actually matched by club funds.
Okay.
And please be aware that every separate project requires a separate application and final report. So if you can put all of them together into one project that's going to be meaningful in your community, that makes it much easier. But if you want to do 6 smaller projects and spread it out, that's okay too. You'll just be doing 6 applications and final reports.
You know, one more caveat about the match and the no match is the no match funds, it is a no-brainer. Your club, all the clubs should use that money, even if they don't contribute any club money. You're just losing it if you don't actually use that no match funds. On the other hand, there are clubs that maybe have a large portion that must be matched and they don't have it in their budget. And so you don't have to use those funds, but you are losing out on them. Other clubs will, that maybe have larger bank accounts, will be able to tap in and use those at a later date.
Very good.
Some questions that have come up in the past is if you can use that for a project in a foreign country. So say the We Rotary wants to fund their Hiroshima Raila or their camp in Hiroshima, then that is possible, right?
It is.
It is. Are you going to give them the caveat?
Well, yeah, sure. Let me see if I get this right, Laura. So definitely, these are your funds. You can do whatever you want. Of course, it does have to be approved by Rotary International. But the caveat that I know is that we are trying to get hands-on activity by club members. These funds, as they're being put to great use in our local community and elsewhere, you know, we want to leverage that. We want people to understand that Rotarians are doing great work in our community. So it's a little harder to do that in another foreign country, but it is possible. But we would like to see at least some sort of hands-on portion by the club.
Well, and We Rotary can certainly has the ability to do that. The caveat that I want to throw in as well is the fact that, remember, this is a project that must be completed so that the final report can be turned in by May 31st. It can't linger. And you've got to be sure that whoever you're working with in a foreign country does have the ability to provide you with the invoices. If there is a difference in the exchange rate between the dollar and whatever currency you're dealing in, that will have to be absorbed by the club if it's the wrong way. And if it's the right way and suddenly you have not spent enough money, you need to figure out how you can spend the rest of the money. We want you to spend all of the money on the project. So it's a little trickier. Allow yourself plenty of time at the end so that you can get these little details. Our club, the very first project that we did under district grants was a hydrant in Thailand. Okay, and it was great, except that all of a sudden, you know, we had $200 extra that we had to spend. So we did it, but it got to be a little more challenging. For global grants, Rotary International absorbs the difference in exchange rates. For district grants, they do not. It is entirely up to the club.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, the other thing that we see or get questioned about is, can we make a pure donation from the funds? And that is not going to be accepted by Rotary International. They really want to see hands-on work by Rotarians in the community. So just want to emphasize that. So, you know, there's a lot of needy organizations and charities right here in Hawaii. We all want to give as much as we can to each of them, but it is a key to have some sort of activity or involvement as part of the grant application and project.
And just since Naomi mentioned the RILA as a possibility for We Rotary for RILA, this is a hard conversation, for RILA in a foreign country is, I will just tell you that 2 years ago, Rotary International decided that they wanted to see a lot of documentation on the people who were conducting the RILA camps, that they had been through all of the necessary youth training, and that how far the students were going to be transported and whether they were spending overnight. And we had to go through an incredible amount of detail for the Maui RILA camps. So just be aware that if you try to do one of those overseas, there might be even more scrutiny on it.
Okay, any other questions?
Dave, another question that comes up is if people can change the use of funds. So they submit it
Sure.
on one application and during the year it changes.
Good point. Yeah, we did see quite a bit of that this year. So yes, absolutely. Say your club applies for doing a project, but all of a sudden the project falls through, something happens, and what do you do now? Well, we are very flexible here. We are completely willing to have you change your grant. I just ask that you either rewrite the application and send it to me, or even just give me a call and I can help walk you through it. I can change it on my end as well, depending on how you sent the file to me. The only thing would be that the budget amount can't really change, or it's a little more difficult to change the budget amount. But yes, absolutely, you could switch gears and do something different.
Hi.
Anybody have questions or comments?
I have a comment.
Thank you. Thank you for doing it by phone.
Laura helped me a lot last year. I think I called her and emailed her probably 5 times, and she walked me through it and we got it done. So thank you, Laura.
No, well, you're welcome. And that's exactly what we're here for. So Dave and I, and I'm speaking for Dave because I know he has done the same thing. We are so willing to take any calls that you need, because sometimes it just gets a little confusing, or there's one silly little thing that's holding everything up. Call us. My cell phone, as a matter of fact, since Monday is the deadline, and that's Memorial Day, I'm going to give you my cell phone number, which is 808-221-126. It's also on the website. To call if you have any questions that are holding up getting that final report in, or your president is.
Laura, can you repeat the cell number, please?
Sure, it's 808-221-0126.
Thank you.
Mhm. And our goal,
Well,
yeah, our great goal is, again, the reason that we're so emphasize that May 31st is we've got to put all of the grants together, match them with what was submitted to Rotary International, make sure everything is accounted for, and submit that our final report from the district into Rotary International so that they can then approve it, because they cannot release next year's funds until this year's district grant is closed out. So if one club doesn't send in their final report, we can't send in the consolidated report, and nobody in District 5000 gets district funds next year. That's why it's so important. So when we get a little testy toward the end, that's why. Just yell. That's my dinner guest who is here. She's going to go in and cook dinner. I think, what kind of guest is that? I tell you, that's great.
that's a perfect dinner guest.
Thank you all very much for doing this makeup.
Yeah, thank you all. Really appreciate your attendance. Naomi, I guess you recorded who attended, and so we've got you checked off the list now. And so let either Laura or I know if you have any questions, and have a great rest of the evening, and looking forward to seeing your qualification documents, grant reports, and your grant applications next year coming in pretty soon. So thank you
And
all.
have a
Thank you,
nice
Dave.
Memorial Day.
Thank you, Laura.
Yes, have a great Memorial Day.
Guys, all right.
Thank you.
Mahalo.
Bye-bye.
Mahalo, bye-bye. And thanks to Naomi for setting everything up, as always.
Yeah, yep. Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you, Naomi. Are we done?
We're good.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Have a good evening.
So, Wailuku didn't make it. So that's really
Okay.
a shame because Wailuku has a lot of grant money,
They do.
so, and I called them and they said that they were going to be here. So, that's too bad. So
I recall we had some issues with them this current year too.
Yeah.
And just getting the correct information from them on their applications.
Yep.